Hello, my name is Steve Prince, and I'm the Director of Engagement at the Muscarella Museum. Welcome to another exciting episode of Blacklite, presented to you by Black Art in America. Each episode, I would do a comparative analysis of two African American artists' artwork, focusing on design, content, and style. Today's featured artists are John Biggers and Elizabeth Catlett. Now, you see, I had the wonderful opportunity of meeting John Biggers in 1991, and I was just fresh out of undergrad at Xavier University of Louisiana. And I traveled to Hampton, Virginia, and I went on the campus and I made my way to the art department. And up on the second floor, I heard his voice off in the distance. I walked through the threshold of the door. I introduced myself and told him what school I came from. And he was good friends with my art professor from undergrad named John Scott, and he began to just give me a tour of the whole department. He walked me into this room, and on the walls he had these two big giant panels that he was working on, and he was doing a piece called House of the Turtle and Treehouse. And he just walked me through the process of how he was making the piece and all the symbolic information that he layered within the works. And then, as you can imagine, I was on cloud nine, just listening to his every word and just seeing that beautiful energy that was emanating from him as he spoke about his work. It wasn't but a few years later that I met Elizabeth Catlett. Now, see, I got together with a group of students when I was in grad school at Michigan State University, and we generated some funds, and we got her, Elizabeth Catlett, her husband, Francisco Moore, their son, Francisco Moore Jr., and his son, Juan Moore, to come to Michigan State, and they shared their work pretty much like a family affair. The greatest moment for me was my thesis show was up at the exact same time. So I walked her through the museum, piece by piece, sharing with Elizabeth Catlett my artwork. Oh, it was so beautiful, but it didn't stop there. The next thing, she saw some drawings that I was working on. She asked me how I did them. So I took her to the art store. We gathered materials together. Then we went up to my studio. And then she just flipped the script where the student became the teacher, teaching the master. I would never forget that day, and I never shall forget meeting both of those profound artists that not only impacted me, but I know have impacted generations of artists. So the two artists' works that I'm going to share with you today is, again, I can go through a whole array of works from these two artists, because they both produce hundreds of thousands of pieces in drawing and painting and sculpture. The list just goes on in terms of murals and projects that they've done literally all around the world. But I pulled upon two pieces that I thought could really go into this comparative analysis. The first piece by John Biggers. It is called Birmingham, Children of the Morning. It's a linoleum cut that he did in 1964, and it's a rather small piece. It's 9 by 12 inches in scale. And a piece that I'm going to share with you today for Catlett, it is called Civil Rights Congress. It is also linoleum cut, 8 inches by 14. It was created in 1949. The piece by Biggers, Birmingham, Children of the Morning. It is an absolutely stunning linoleum cut. And for those of you not familiar with the process, it is a means where you take a drawing, you put it on a substrate, which is like a floor tile-like material. Then after you make that drawing on the surface, you then use cutting tools and cut away the negative space, leaving the positive lines that you've left on the surface of the block. You put ink on top, run it through a press, pull the paper back, and you have what is called a print or a relief print. The stunning aspect about this piece is the paucity of lines and marks that he made to define the forms. He's allowing just the rich, dark shadows define the forms as they have this really deep black core shadow that sits in each one of the forms as they're making their way from the darkness into the light towards the church. The light is behind the church and is cascading, creating a shadow that's casting onto the ground, and is creating shadows on the children and the mother figure who's walking in between them. You can see the gaiety of their steps, the happiness of the little girls walking with their little purses on their arms. You can see the strong light casting at the bottom of the little girl's dress, where you can possibly see like her slip or the little fringe around the edge of the dress. Biggers delicately uses circular cuts that he pulls and extracts to create that light dark tessellation kind of feeling within the composition. Then symbolically, you see that not only does he have the 4 girls who were slain in the 1963 church bombing in Birmingham, Alabama, he has the mother walking between them, not knowing that this is the last time that she's going to see her child or these children, not knowing that underneath this church is a bomb that's planted there with a really evil intent to take away lives. As you also look inside the composition, there are 4 gravestones or tombstones over to the left-hand side of the compositional space. There, that is a precursor to what is about to happen. But also in the staccato-like marks that he creates at the top of the compositional space, you see a diagonal of birds taking flight, alluding to this idea of the dove taking away these souls into heaven. John Biggers, in a very beautiful and poetic way, he helps us to remember. He helps us to not forget. You see, this piece was done in 1964, 1 year after the bombing took place. And in the composition, the cluster of family was disrupted that day. But he also tells us not only these are children of the morning as they were going to church, he's also letting us know this is a moment in which we will mourn the children. And the piece by Catlett, again, is another piece that shares the things that African Americans were going through within this nation. The large guy at the top who's grabbing at the skeletal structure of the Klansmen is William Patterson. William Patterson was a lawyer back in that time period. And from 1946 to 1956, he was one of the instrumental people in creating a group called the Civil Rights Congress. And their job was to expose those different things that were happening to African Americans who were being put into prison cells and who were being accused of crimes that they did not commit and who were going to be executed. And so what he did with this group, he went all across the United States and they created an outcry about these issues in order to save and preserve the lives of our children, of our young men and young women who were being put into these jail cells and whose lives are being sopped away from them. But what Catlett does, she turns him into like a superhero. His arms are strong, his eyes are direct as he's coming from the top left-hand side of the compositional space. As he's moving into the composition, grabbing at this character who is about to try to pounce upon this little child, holding in his hand a hangman's noose. The letter CRC is emblazoned upon his body. In the background, you see a cross, and you see another ghostly figure of the Ku Klux Klan lingering and terrorizing the black community, trying to take away from the beautiful innocence that Elizabeth Catlett places upon the face of the child. You see, in both images by Catlett and by Biggers, stylistically they're different, whereas Biggers chooses to make the figures more silhouetted and more solid. And he's working in a very similar style where he oftentimes show you from behind the figures as they move into a particular space, as if to be in community with those people take us on a walk, our journey into the church with him. He's pulling us into the compositional space. Whereas Catlett flips that whole idea around and we become witnesses and we are looking at Patterson do his work. And in essence, it's calling upon us to do a similar thing. It's calling upon us to step up and to protect not only our children, protect the innocent, protect those who are falsely accused. It is a calling that I believe that is very pertinent to this moment right now as we are proclaiming out of our mouths, Black Lives Matter. Oh, these artists have given us great lessons. They have left behind such a wonderful legacy of their artwork that spoke to the times, but also speaks to us right now. As we look out through our lens or as we walk into these situations, I believe both of these artists are urging us, encouraging us to step up, be active in the lives of people, regardless of race, regardless of representation or social and economic class. Is that we must use our gifts within the community to transform this world. So, folks, thank you for being with us on this episode. And thank you for allowing us to shine a black light on African American art. See you next time.